we'd like to welcome Larry Walsh to the Challenging Decisions podcast today. Welcome, Larry.
Hey, George, great to be here.
Larry is a very, very senior and experienced channel expert and technologist. He's been involved with channel marketing for many, many years. I think probably I met Larry originally somewhere in the neighborhood of when you first started with VAR Business, which was, I guess, 2005. And, I was engaged with CRM and VAR Business at that time, and working with Bob Filetra and Bob DeMarzo and Alex Nordlinger all at that time. And we were very much engaged strategically. But you were off to the races in your own efforts. And tell us a little bit about how you launched that with VAR Business and how that went for you.
It's funny. I was just thinking about this. I can't believe it's been 16 years since that happened. And I know that because I often say that I moved to Long Island for that job, and I kept saying it was only temporary because I never had any ambition to ever live in New York. And yet here I am temporarily 16 years later, still here. It was a great time. I mean, I think I started talking with Bob Fletcher and Bob DeMarzo about a year before they even hired me. And it was, and honestly, it was just, to me, I was in publishing. I'd been a journalist for 15 years prior to that. I started off in newspapers all through the 90s. I had my first job, cut my teeth at the Boston Globe, and became a bit of a journeyman in Boston area newspapers. And then I moved my way into magazines. And at the time, I was the editor of a security magazine called Information Security. We were the #1 security magazine at that point. And strangely enough, few people even talking about security. And I kind of got a wild hair that said, yeah, maybe it's time for a change. And just started looking for opportunities and ran into the Bobs, and the rest is history. I didn't even know how to spell channel when I started VAR Business. It was a baptism by fire, to say the least.
Yeah, and CRN at that point in time was without a doubt the center of the channel universe in terms of publishing. Now, what you may or may not know about me, I'm going to give you, I wasn't intending to, but I'm going to give you 2 or 3 minutes of my channel background. My first job after college, believe it or not, was working in a camera store. And so we ended up selling audiovisual products, camera products, darkroom products, anything and everything in that AV kind of sphere. There was no such thing as computers back then. But I went from there to Sony Corporation, and at Sony Corporation, Consumer Electronics, I was calling on every channel under the sun, which back then included places like Pacific Stereo, hi-fi retailers, department stores like Goldblatt's, mass merchandisers, and people like the McDade Catalog House, mom and pop dealers, and so on and so forth. So every channel of trade under the sun that existed at that time, I was involved in learning how they all worked, and so on and so forth. And then immediately following that, I started in 1981 with a manufacturer's rep firm here in Chicago by the name of GB Marketing. And very shortly after we started, we were awarded the personal software product line, which was the original VisiCalc, which predated Lotus 123, which predated Excel. And so we were repping software product line, and then just like 2 or 3 months after that, Apple Computer awarded us the representation for the tri-state area. And so, I was off to my own set of races for 13 years in the computer industry. But we put on, and of course they're all gone now, we put on all the Apple dealers at that point in time, all the computer lands, the business lands, the bike shops, and so on and so forth. So my channel background goes all the way back to 1981. And then, as you probably remember, I founded my channel sales incentive company, MTC Performance, which I operated for 25 years. So between the two of us, we have really extensive and deep channel knowledge. Now you're, I think, probably quite a bit more current than I am. And, you have one thing we want to acknowledge about Larry, uh, is Larry, you have had the opportunity, maybe not in the last year so much, but you have had the opportunity to become a acknowledged and powerful speaker in front of all sorts of computer industry high-tech groups. And I know I've attended a number of your sessions, whether at the BAPTI conference or other conferences that you've spoken at. And you've spoken on a wide variety of topics, and you've come to have you are very highly regarded in the channel marketing sphere. So it's exciting to have a chance to talk with you at some length today.
I appreciate you saying that. And I think that, as I said, my time in bar business was short for a variety of reasons, mostly because of the changing in publishing. And, there was I got caught up in a layoff cycle as they were downsizing the company. The parent company was downsizing. I really didn't have a true appreciation for it even then. I mean, I was just starting after a couple of years there. I was just starting to really feel like I was understanding. But one of the things that I've done over the years is looked back, much like you talking about your early days working for the manufacturer's rep, working for Sony, calling on all the partners. I've thought about it as like, we tend to think about the channel. Us who work in the technology channel tend to think of it as the channel, and it's not. Every industry has a channel. The channel is ancient. Going back to the days of Mesopotamia, we've been talking. Ever since there's been trade, there's been a channel, and I've reached back into my early days, going back into the early '80s when I worked on lobster boats in Massachusetts. As a teenager, I was working on lobster boats, and that gave way. I ended up going to work for a lobster pound. And for those who aren't from New England, a lobster pound is where the boats bring the lobsters for processing. And I from there, I ended up driving the truck, doing the deliveries of the lobsters to restaurants and air freights, and I tell people the story. They're like, "Well, what does this have to do with the channel?" I go, "Don't you understand? The boats were catching the lobsters. They were bringing it to a distributor. That distributor was then bringing it to either a retailer or a restaurant, which then sold it again to the ultimate consumer. That's a channel." And that's exactly how the channel works then. It was worked before, and it's going to work in the future. There will always be this motion to carry forward product from one source through a mechanism to get to the ultimate consumer.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, and you're absolutely right. It really doesn't matter what industry you're talking about. I mean, to some extent, but unless you're someone like Tesla or a couple of outliers that want to have the end-to-end supply chain, production all the way through to end users, reality is there's a channel hiding there somewhere. And I know myself, every time I try to explain that I'm involved with channel marketing in one fashion or another to a layperson, you may as well get the deer in the headlights scenario going, because they don't really understand channels. But channels are there. Channels are everywhere.